Welcome back to week 7 of the Robotics for All Python class. Last week we learned about functions, dictionaries, and f-strings. This week we are going to talk about reading and writing files as well as Python has built-in functions for file handling that allow you to create and manipulate files. The key functions are for opening, closing, reading, and writing to files. Opening a file will set up a file so that we can either read its contents or write to it. The syntax for opening a file is var equals open file name, comma, mode. So for example, this will open and create a file named Python concepts and assign it to the variable f. After writing to a file, you will have to close the file. Since strings will only be written to it after it is closed in the code, you can close a file by doing this syntax, var.close and a pair of parentheses. So for our example where we assigned f as the variable, you would do f.close and a pair of parentheses. So there are different access modes that change the permissions of the file and what you'll be able to do with it. You can open a file in write-only mode by using the letter W, or in read-only mode by using the letter R. When we call the write method on the file that we created, the string inside the method is inserted or written into the file. The syntax is var.write string. So for example, if the mode is W for write, and the variable that the file was assigned, the file Python concepts was assigned to is f, then we would do f.write, and if the string we want is functions, this is how we would write the string functions into the file Python concepts. So let's press run. And as you can see, a file was created and functions was written to the file. When we write to a file multiple times, what we write will not be printed on separate lines and will instead be written onto the same one. So for example, if we have 3 write statements, functions, code, and concepts. If we press run and we check the file, functions, code, and concepts are all written onto the same line. If we want the writing to go onto a new line, we would have to use the new line statement, which is a backslash and an n, and put it inside the string at the end of it, inside of the write statement. So we add new line characters at the end of it, and we press run. This time each line is written onto its own. Each string is written onto its own line. To output the number of characters in a line written to a file, we can wrap it with a print statement. So if you wrap f.write functions with a print statement, then this will print out how many letters are in functions, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this should print out 9, which it does. 9 is printed out since the string is 9 characters. Reading a file is when you pull the data or text from the file. To read a certain number of characters, you would do var.read and in the parentheses n. Where n is an integer, it will read the first n characters in the file assigned to var. For example, var.read 4 will print out the first 4 characters of the file. If you wrap it with a print statement, it will output and print those first 4 characters. So for example, we're going to do that with the file that we created called Python concepts. So we're going to open the file in read mode, which is with an R as the mode. And then we're going to read the first 4 characters by doing f.read 4, and we're going to wrap that with the print statement. And then we're going to close it, f.close. Okay. So as you can see, it printed out func which is 4 characters long, and it's the first 4 characters in our file. To read a line in the file, you would do var.readLine, and then a pair of parentheses. The first time it is used, it will read the first line in the file. The second time, it will read the second line in the file. So let's get rid of this print statement, which printed out the number of characters in the line earlier, which is 9. And we're going to write a few more print statements, code concepts, and add the new line characters. So this time, let's do f.readLine. This will read the first line in the file, which will be functions. And then if we want to output it, we're going to wrap it with a print statement. So as you see, it printed out functions. And then if you do this a second time, if you have the second read line statement will not print out functions again, and still will print out the second line, which is code. So let's run it and see we got functions and then code. To read the entire file, you would do var.read with no parameters. So there's no number inside the parentheses, like when we wanted to print out the first 4 characters. So let's do f.read, parentheses, press run, and it'll print out, well, when we wrap it with a print statement, it will print out all of the lines in the file, the entire file, which is functions, code, and concepts. Try and accept is a special block of code, like an if statement, for a loop, or function, that is useful for troubleshooting and finding errors in your code while it is running or dealing with user input. The try block will test a block of code for errors, and if there is an error, instead of the program stopping and an error message being outputted, the program will continue to run and the except block will be executed. So the block of code that you want to test should be indented with the line before it being try, with a colon at the end. And the code that you want to run in the case of an error should also be indented, and it should follow the try block with the line in between being word except with a colon at the end. So for example, the try block could have a variable named var that is equal to the string hello, and we can add 1 to the variable var. And then the except block could have a print statement that prints out there is an error. So if we run this, there is an error we printed out since we cannot concatenate a string with an integer. If the try and except block try and except is not used, and the program would be stopped and an error would be raised. That concludes the week 7 video. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you in the next class.